Scott Holliday here, and we're going to start today's edition of Plus 2 Wrestling like we've never started an episode before. Oh yes, we are going to start this episode with magic. From this ordinary hat, I shall produce a rabbit. Nothing in my hand, nothing up my sleeve. Oh, penny for the song, governor? Pretty amazing, right? No, it's not. But it's going to make sense later, trust me. Because today, I want to talk to you about magic. Because you see, Scott Holliday, he's a big fan of magic. And you might be sitting there thinking, Scott, you already know so much about professional wrestling. And last week, you went on and on about things like sci-fi, comic books, and Pokemon. And now you're going to sit there and say that you're a fan of magic as well? How do you get anything done with all the women chasing you? It's hard. It is hard. But I do it for you. But I am a huge fan of magic, and I recently headed out to Las Vegas to watch Double or Nothing. And Las Vegas is the epicenter of magic, so I knew I had to catch a magic show while I was out there. So I got to see Criss Angel's Mindfreak live. I've been a fan of Criss Angel for years. If you don't know Criss Angel, he is kind of like an extreme magician. He does like lots of big stunts. His first stunt, like the first one that like really got him some notoriety, is he was suspended inside one of those like Houdini torture water tanks for 24 hours. And he did that stunt at WWE New York. Criss Angel has been a WWE guy for years. So this is wrestling related, so don't tune out, please, I beg you. And I've watched him basically his entire career. I watched Criss Angel Mindfreak, I watched Criss Angel Believe, I watched Phenomenon. I was a big fan of Criss Angel because all of his effects were impossible. They were so mind-blowing. So when I got the opportunity to see Criss Angel live at Planet Hollywood, I jumped at the opportunity. And seeing Criss Angel live, and I say this without an ounce of hyperbole, Criss Angel Mindfreak live is, without a doubt, the biggest dog shit magic show I have ever seen. And take that from me, the guy who tries not to curse on this show. Criss Angel's Mindfreak was a miserable experience. All of his tricks were so simple and poorly executed, and I just sat there watching that as a fan of magic, getting angrier and angrier and angrier. But the anger felt so familiar, and I couldn't quite place why I felt this anger before. And then he said something that really hit home to me. He talked about when he started his journey as a magician. He said that his dad gave him advice. He said, don't do research. Don't look into how these other guys are doing it. No. Find your own way. Create your own methods. Don't look at how other professionals are doing it. Just figure it out on your own. And that's when it all clicked for me. The way that there are wrestlers out there that know how to do moves because they've seen them on TV but have never trained. The wrestlers who can do moves but can't wrestle is the same type of feeling when I see Criss Angel, who knows how to do tricks, but doesn't know how to do magic. So I thought this was a great opportunity to show the pitfalls in independent wrestling through Criss Angel. So this is why Criss Angel Mindfreak is the worst independent wrestling show I've ever seen. Number 1, kayfabe. Now, most people will tell you that kayfabe is dead, and I'm here to tell you that it's not. At least not in the way that you think it is. Because everyone going to a wrestling show probably knows that wrestling, in some aspect, is scripted. The same way that most people going to see Criss Angel don't think he is an otherworldly wizard. They understand that they're about to see some sort of illusion. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't still protect the illusion. See, kayfabe, what it actually means is protecting the business. It's not keeping the idea that it's all real. It's protecting how things are done. When I go to an independent wrestling show, nothing upsets me more than when I see two wrestlers discussing their match in front of the fans, or two wrestlers practicing their match in the ring in front of fans. Yes, I know that wrestling isn't real, but I need you to maintain the illusion. And that is something that Criss Angel wasn't able to do. Now, as a fan of Criss Angel, before the show, I was walking around looking at all of his motorcycles and his merch, and as I was walking through the gift shop, I ran into JD. If you don't know JD helps run a lot of Criss Angel's show. He's been with him his entire life, and you could see him on like Mindfreak and Believe because he is Criss Angel's brother. And yet you can see they actually have quite a bit of a resemblance. Like they have the same like chin, and they have the same forehead, and they have the same like haircut. They really look similar. I mean, the sunglasses make it a little bit hard to understand. So can we give him sunglasses as well? Yeah. They do. You can really see that they look alike. I mean, it's almost like JD could be Criss Angel's double. Now, I'm not saying that using a double to do your trick is cheating. But you shouldn't telegraph it. Because as soon as I saw JD, I was like, oh, I bet you that there will be a moment where Criss Angel is on stage, and then Criss Angel disappears and appears in the audience. And what do you know? That exact thing happened. It's a common trick, but I shouldn't be walking around seeing the solution to it, just walking around the planet Hollywood. Not only that, later in the show, Criss Angel points him out. He's like, look, there's my brother JD. Everybody give it up for him. No, Criss, that's your double. Stop bringing attention to the fact that that's how you do your trick. I know it's an illusion, but the fun of it is not knowing how you do it. The same way that I know professional wrestling isn't real. But when I watch you practice taking a finisher and pop right up, you're ruining the illusion. So remember, don't be like Criss Angel. Keep kayfabe. Number 2, sell. Now, this is the biggest criticism that you'll hear in not just independent wrestling, in all professional wrestling. Nobody sells anymore. And it's true to an extent that the style has changed, and selling less and moving quickly into a new move, that gets a good reaction out of the crowd. But it's still important when you do something important that we're supposed to accept is important, that you sell it as important. Let me give you an example. Criss Angel brought out a clear box. It was spinning 360 degrees so you could see all around it, and it was suspended so you could see under it. He then brought some curtains up, waited a moment, did some magic hands, and then when the curtains came down, there were 4 beautiful women in that box. And then that box was quickly pulled off stage and went into the wings. And we never saw those women again. It is important, as a magician, to sell that what just happened was amazing. That box was empty. Then it was full of 4 beautiful women. Why not have them get out of the box? Let us clap for him. Let us be excited that an illusion just took place. Instead of putting any value on that trick, it was just a weird transition to the next thing he was doing. The same way that if you take a wrestling maneuver and don't sell the injury and impact of that maneuver, you take away its value. The goal in wrestling is to do damage to your opponent. If you do a thing and no damage is incurred, then what you did was not valuable. The same way that a magician's goal is to amaze. And if you don't sell that what you just did was amazing, then you are not doing something to give value to the amazing thing that you did. Don't be like Criss Angel. Sell your moves. Number 3, credibility. So when I did my little magic trick with pulling the rabbit out of this hat, this trick had no credibility because I never showed you that the hat was empty. So there was no reason to think it was amazing that I pulled out of a rabbit out of nowhere because I never showed you that this was empty. There was no credibility. The same way that Criss Angel screwed up a magic trick. There was a trick where Criss Angel escaped a straitjacket. And before the show, he let us try the straitjacket on. Here's a picture of me in the straitjacket. It's blurry and far away because the professional picture was $45, and I was too angry at Criss Angel to give him more money. But I was able to put it on and feel it and be like, oh, this is tight. There's no gimmicks in it. That's a real straitjacket. And then when he escaped from it, I was like, hey, I was in that straitjacket. That straitjacket has credibility. That's amazing. And then they took him immediately after escaping this and threw him in a box and locked it. A box that we had never seen before and was given no credibility. We weren't even shown what the back of the box looked like. For all I know, the back of that box doesn't exist and is just an open area. And then they locked the box with a lock I had never seen before. They didn't pull on it to show that once it's locked, it can't be opened. It lacked any credibility. And in wrestling, credibility is very important. Nothing makes me sadder than when I go to an independent wrestling show and some new independent wrestler has an amazing finisher that he cannot wait to show off in a match that he's not winning. I've seen quite a few wrestlers on their journey make sure that they hit their super cool move, knowing that that means that someone was going to kick out of it. That move is losing all credibility because people are kicking out of it. And when you're new to the world of professional wrestling, you're not going to win all of your matches when you're a debuting wrestler. You got to, pay your dues. But eventually, you want to get to the point where you start winning matches. And if you've destroyed the credibility of your finisher, that's going to be a lot harder to do. Personally, one of my favorite finishers today in wrestling is the Black Arrow. Because right now, it's bulletproof. No one's ever kicked out of it. Like, the only person to have escaped the Black Arrow, or the Red Arrow at the time, is Seth Rollins. Because he accidentally pulled his foot on the rope when he was covering him. And Pac had the match won, because his move's bulletproof. But because he pulled too far and got a little too excited, he caused a rope break. Same thing with the End of Days, with the One-Winged Angel. For years, no one ever kicked out of that. The only person to have kicked out of the End of Days is Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania, which means that meant something when it happened. The only person to have kicked out of the One-Winged Angel is Kenny Omega, which means that the credibility of when he performs the move that he's perfected, it's still very credible. It's important to build credibility into the things that you are presenting as important to the crowd. Don't be like Criss Angel. If there is something that you are going to present as important, make sure it stays credible. Number 4, sad old timer. Now, I don't want to be cruel here, but Criss Angel constantly throughout his performance mentioned that he is a 56-year-old man. He is an elder magician. He's been around for quite some time, and that does give him some credibility. He's a legend in the game. But as big of a mistake as it is for Magic, it's a big mistake in professional wrestling. Just because you're a name in the business doesn't mean you don't have to do anything. Like, so many times I've seen smaller promotions book a big name that they were surprised that they were able to get. Like, oh my God, look, we got Sid. Sid's gonna be there. Look, we got Salvatore Sincere. Sal Sincere is gonna be there. And they think just because they've done that booking that the show will be a success. Like, we don't really have to flyer or push this out. No. We book Sid. The show will sell itself. And it doesn't. Criss Angel has been just resting on his laurels for years now. The tricks that he was doing was not anything new or exciting. They were all stuff that he had done previously on Mindfreak. And he would even mention that. He's like, you might remember this trick from Season 2. It's like, well, if I saw it in Season 2, why don't you do something new? Because I saw that in Season 2 for free on my TV. I paid money to be here. I'm expecting the Criss Angel experience. And what Criss Angel instead did was he did crowd work for, no joke, 25 minutes. Like, I know we're here to see Criss Angel, but I didn't come here to see him talk about nothing for minutes on end. The same way that when you book a legendary wrestler, I want to see him wrestle. And sometimes they can't do that anymore. And that's just going to leave your audience disappointed. Now, I'm not going to talk trash on any legendary wrestlers, but I've definitely seen some that come in, they're like, these are the 3 things I do. I'll talk for a bit, I'll plug the things I want to plug, and then you'll pay me my big bag of money. And that's not a good relationship to have with someone. I want to personally shout out the late, great Nikolai Volkov. When I was starting my career in wrestling as a ring announcer, I got to announce Nikolai Volkov to the ring. And Nikolai was pretty old at this point. He was up there in years. But he knew that. And he still did everything he could to create the greatest match he could for the fans. He talked to the other wrestlers and gave advice. He explained that people are going to cheer him because he's the legend, so He wanted to start by singing the national anthem and have the heel attack him. And while he couldn't bump a lot, he took a lot of offense. He took a lot of strikes. He took a lot of whips into the corner. He was protecting his body in his advanced age, but he was still willing to give back to everyone else. He made the show better and didn't just rest on his laurels. You want someone who will help your show, that will be a great component of the show and elevate the show. You don't want to bring in a legend and just be like, well, he's the show now. We got him, so we're fine. This is gonna be great. That is a huge mistake. I remember sitting there watching Criss Angel as he talked and talked and talked, and actually having the thought, I wish he would bring out a young magician. What a great time to just showcase a young magician. And there's a lot of wrestlers who are advanced in age that take all that spotlight for themselves and don't build up other talent around him. One more thing about Criss Angel. Criss Angel does have a moment where he actually says, give it up for my crew. And they let them come out and take a bow. And while that's happening, he's playing the theme song to Mindfreak. And if you don't know the lyrics, it's I am the Mindfreak, there is no reality. While he was giving praise to his crew, he played a song about how great he is, that he wrote, that he's singing. We don't want to just rest on our laurels, and we don't want to have, oh, we have a legend, so it's fine. No, don't be like Criss Angel. Just because you have a name doesn't mean you don't have to put in the work necessary to put on a good show. And speaking on putting in that work that's necessary, we'll get back to this after we plug in. This very Sunday on the High Tension Wrestling YouTube channel, it is the premiere of episode 3 of Boiling Point. So, this Sunday, that is the 16th, around 1 o'clock, sit down with Dad and watch episode 3 of Boiling Point, where you will see Dr. Ethan Wilde take on Old Man Young Boy. And brave Billy Avery goes one-on-one with Dylan Mesh. You can also catch up on the past 2 episodes of Boiling Point on the High Tension Wrestling YouTube page, and of course I am on the call. Also, CZW returns to Love Park on June 22nd for a free show. Yes, 100% free. So join us. The bell rings at 6 o'clock at Love Park in Philadelphia. There you will see the Lost Boys take on Mob Hill in trios action. Journey Burke Esquire goes one-on-one with Junie Underwood. For the CZW World Heavyweight Championship, Vinny Tallada tries to pry that title away from the new champion, Aaron Ash. And just announced, Deshaun Pratt goes one-on-one with Sean Smith. Sean Smith has been having an amazing showing. He's yet to get that big victory here in CZW, but had a great showing at Best of the Best and is trying to make a statement against the veteran, Deshaun Pratt. You're not going to want to miss this one because it's free. So join us in Love Park on June 22nd. And then join us for more Combat Zone Wrestling on 4th of July weekend with a double header. Yes, on July 6th, that's a Saturday, we return to the Power Plant Live in Baltimore, Maryland for Charm City Chaos. There you will see Deshaun Pratt versus Aaron Ash. This will be for the World Heavyweight Championship if Aaron Ash can get past Vinny Tallada. Plus, it is the return of Baltimore's own Blackheart Leo Rush. Lio Rush returns to the Combat Zone on July 6th, so be sure to join us at the Power Plant Live. Doors open at 6 o'clock, so the bell rings at 7 o'clock, and you can get your tickets at czwrestling.com. And then the very next day, we return to the beautiful State Theater in Havre de Grace, Maryland for Limelight 27. The doors open at 3 o'clock. The bell rings at 4. It's a weekend of Combat Zone Wrestling, and I will see you there. I guess we got to talk about Criss Angel more. All right, let's keep going. Number 5, lack of variety. Now, Criss Angel performed for about 90 minutes. And 25 minutes of that of talking, so there's like an hour. But Criss Angel did like 4 tricks total. Like, here's a great example. He did a whole trick where he was flying. You know? He was up against a black background, and then he ascended into the sky. And then, after that trick, he was like, it's time for what Vanish Magazine decided was the greatest trick of all time. And he flew again. We had just seen him fly. Now, this time it was a bit different. Instead of being against a black background, he was perched on top of a ladder. And then he walked down the ladder, and then he was just kind of flying. He was doing flips. He went underneath a ladder to show that there were no cables. And then he went into a box and was like, I'm in a box. You can't, I'm flying. And all of that is amazing. If I didn't just see him fly like a couple minutes ago. And this is why it's so important that in professional wrestling, you talk to the match before you. We had a CZW show not too long ago where I happened to overhear 2 people talking about their match, not in front of the fans, and I heard them call a spot. And I walked over and I said, hey, are you doing this spot? He's like, yeah, that's our finish. I was like, okay, that's the finish of the match right before you. And they looked at me and they said, thank you. We'll figure out something else. It's so important to not just focus on your match, but to focus on the whole show. There's nothing more frustrating than seeing a move in match 1 that is then a finisher in match 2. There's nothing more frustrating than seeing a brawl that takes over the arena for minutes on end in match 3, and then a count out in match 4. It's important that the show as a whole makes sense, and it's vital that everyone has their own flavor, because no one's going to stand out if you're doing the same thing in every single match. It is important to have variety. Don't be like Criss Angel. Make sure your match is unique. Number 6, lack of originality. Now, throughout this video, I threw up some visual representation so you understood what I was talking about. I wasn't able to show you Criss Angel actually doing the tricks I was describing because it was a live show, and I can't really record a live show, and you're supposed to buy tickets for that, and there's no recording allowed. There's no good recording of this. But it's weird that I could find basically those exact same tricks just on the internet being done by someone else, right? That shows lack of originality. You should not just be doing tricks that everyone else does. And that's why I was so upset when I was watching Criss Angel fly. Because that is a David Copperfield trick. Like, almost beat for beat. You start flying, you fly through something, and then you fly into a box. David Copperfield did this exact trick in the 90s. How is this now the greatest illusion of all time according to Vanish magazine. How is this in your act? How is this your finale? I know that professional wrestlers in the independent scene are fans of professional wrestling. And you might think to yourself, you know what gets people hot? Stunners, people's elbows, RKOs. But someone else owns those moves. You shouldn't be adding those to your repertoire. If I hear someone say something like, oh, my finisher, it's a submission hold. It's called the crossbones. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, what's it look like? Oh, it's a sharpshooter. It'll never be the crossbones. That will always be the sharpshooter. Because that's what it is. You can give it a different name and say that you're a different person doing it. But we are the wrestling fans watching this. We are fans of wrestling, and we know what that move is. And it's a sharpshooter. Don't be like Criss Angel. Don't finish your show with something that David Copperfield did. Actually, if your finisher is something David Copperfield did in a pro wrestling ring, that's kind of awesome. So let's do this dumb trick again, all right? So I am going to pull something out of this hat. For the sake of credibility, I'm going to show you that the hat is empty. There is nothing inside this hat. And then, for originality's sake, instead of pulling a rabbit out, I'll pull out a bird. So I'm going to pull a bird out of this hat. Nothing on my sleeve, nothing in my hand. Okay, no, I'll do it for real. Ready? Hey! It's Darkwing Duck! That's a bird. It's not the best trick in the world, I know. But at least I've attempted to add some credibility, some originality to it. And granted, I probably shouldn't do the same trick twice in a row. But still, I'm trying. I'm still an independent magician. Did this help at all to help you understand the world of independent wrestling by looking through it through the lens of magic? I hope so. Please let me know in the comments down below. And maybe I'll take some other form of media and explain why it is the worst independent wrestling show there is. If you got a suggestion, you can also throw that down in the comments. And while you're down there, be sure to subscribe. You sat through a Criss Angel video. You must like me. Hit subscribe down there. That's going to do it for today on Plus 2 Wrestling. And I hope you have a great day.